So early this morning, we heard General Electric Chairman and CEO Jeff Immelt called on Speaker Boehner to, quote, take the heat and get Republicans to support a compromise on the fiscal cliff. Immelt knows about something like taking the heat. In our interview Friday, he spoke at length about the consequences of not making a deal. And for those who say we can go over the fiscal cliff and it might not be such a bad thing, you say?
I say there are people that don't have anybody that works for them. You know, in other words, we haven't been on this for 2 weeks or 2 days or 2 months. We've been working on this for 2.5 years. What happened in July of 2011 was ugly. You know, I read stories now to say, you know, the president lost, or he shouldn't have done this, or Speaker Boehner done that. They both failed. You know, nobody won on that moment in time. It hurt us inside the country, it hurt us outside the country. So I would say that if this goes into next year, we ought to consider that failure. We ought to get these guys to do a deal that they know they can do, and we got to get them to do it now. And this is not just Jeff Immelt of GE speaking. This is really, I would say, the business community almost universally speaks with one voice that this needs to get done. It needs to get done now. And moving into next year is just failure.
I don't know of any CEO who knows more about the world because of how much you travel and how many countries you have business in. What's the impression of the United States in those countries, because you meet with the leaders of these countries as well as their establishment? What are they saying about us? Clearly they're saying, get your financial house in order.
I think people look at that and say, this is a country that's so admired. Why can't we do, you know, why can't people just compromise and get along and things like that? And I would go beyond that to say, the dollar is the reserve currency. Every American benefits from that, every American. 300 million plus of us all benefit from the fact that we're the reserve currency. Now, you know, you default on your debt or you lose your debt ratings a few times, that's not going to be the case, and you lose that in a minute. That doesn't something that erodes over a decade. And so we can't take that for granted. That is an important aspect.
This has been a good ride for you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you love the job.
Yeah.
The hardest thing, I assume, was, one, the dividend announcement and not meeting expectations for a quarter. What do you wake up and say when you know you've got to make that call?
Oh, look, I'd say cutting the G dividend was the worst day of my life. I just hated myself. I felt like I'd let so many people down. I'd said I wouldn't do it. I was so incredibly disappointed in myself. I'll never forget it, Charlie, as long as I live. But it was what I had to do for the company at that moment in time. And I just think the strength of will to get up the next day and to face your team with a smile on your face, quiet confidence, and go forward. That's why we have these jobs. Really, in the good days, they're not that hard to manage. You know, I've got a ton of good people that work for me that could run GE in the good days. It's those bad days where you actually need somebody to step up and take the heat. And it's seared in my soul. And investors should know that I will work my butt off for the rest of my life. And you know, really, I think you can make people like, you know, if you don't make the tough decision at the right time, you're gonna lose your company. But if you make it and persevere, so people will like you again someday.
Maybe not that day, but someday.
Not that day. You're gonna have one day, if you do these jobs a long time.
Yeah.
You're gonna have 1 or 2 days where everybody hates you.
You can see, we know what he's talking about, don't we?
Yes, we do.
You can see my entire interview with Jeff Immelt tonight on Charlie Roche's program on PBS. A very interesting guy. What he said that was, I took away from it, he said the business community is united about this. Those two people in the White House talking this weekend have got to make a deal.
Yes. You know what I thought was interesting? It's so rare you see a CEO of that stature talking so candidly about something so personal, that he said that he was very disappointed in himself. You don't see guys talking that way, Charlie.
Last time we saw it was with President Obama in the White House.
Yeah. Yeah, but
you remember that?
I think you draw something out in people is the point I was making. I really do.